argument for Caitlyn is that it would have been a great
Stop everything you're doing right now. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't speculation. It isn't gossip. It isn't another clickbait headline designed to waste your time. This is confirmed. Stephen A. Smith, one of the most connected voices in all of sports media, just went on national television and said words that sent shockwaves through the entire basketball world. Caitlin Clark, new team, done deal. And the moment he finished speaking, phones started ringing in boardrooms across the country. Executives panicked, agents scrambled, and the WNBA? They're watching their entire future slip through their fingers in real time. Here's the thing nobody wants to admit out loud. The most dominant force in women's basketball, the woman who single-handedly saved a dying league, is about to walk away from the system that refuses to pay her what she's worth. But this isn't a story about money. No, this is a story about power, about control, about a 22-year-old from Iowa who figured out something the old guard never wanted her to understand. She doesn't need them. They need her. And now, a brand new league just handed her the keys to the kingdom. We're talking ownership stakes, equity deals, revenue sharing agreements that have never, and I mean never, been offered to a female athlete in the history of professional sports. Stephen A. compared her to Lionel Messi. Let that sink in for a second. Not LeBron, not Jordan, not any basketball player at all. Messi, the man who came to America and rewrote the rules of what a superstar contract looks like. The man who demanded, and received, a piece of every single Apple TV subscription generated by his presence. That's the blueprint. That's the precedent. And according to Stephen A. Smith, that's exactly what Caitlin Clark is about to receive. The league making this offer? It's called Unrivaled. You might have heard whispers about it. Maybe you dismissed it as some off-season gimmick. A 3-on-3 sideshow designed to keep players busy between real games. But you'd be wrong. Dead wrong. Because behind those whispers is a machine. A venture-backed, private equity-funded powerhouse created by two of the biggest names in women's basketball history. And they're not here to compete with the WNBA. They're here to replace it. The question isn't whether Caitlin Clark will sign. The question is, what happens to everyone else when she does? Because the moment she puts pen to paper, the entire landscape of women's professional basketball changes forever. The hierarchy collapses. The salary structure becomes meaningless. And every player in the WNBA has to ask themselves one terrifying question. Why am I still here? But before we dive deeper into the specifics of this deal, the actual numbers, the ownership percentages, the equity stakes that would make Wall Street executives jealous, we need to understand how we got here. How did Caitlin Clark go from college phenom to the most powerful athlete in America? And more importantly, why is the league she saved trying so desperately to destroy her? The answer will shock you. Let me take you back to a moment that changed everything. March 2024. The NCAA Women's Tournament. Television executives are staring at their screens in disbelief. Ratings analysts are refreshing their dashboards, convinced there's been some kind of glitch. Advertisers are calling emergency meetings. Because the numbers don't make sense. Caitlin Clark, a point guard from Iowa, just drew more viewers than the men's Final Four. Read that again. More viewers than the men. In a single afternoon, she shattered every assumption the sports industry had held sacred for decades. Women's basketball doesn't sell. Women's sports don't generate revenue. Female athletes can't carry a broadcast. Wrong. 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 Caitlin Clark proved them all catastrophically wrong. And the WNBA saw dollar signs. They rushed to capitalize. They fast-tracked marketing campaigns. They negotiated new television deals worth billions, based almost entirely on one player's drawing power. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. When it came time to actually pay Caitlin Clark, silence. The same league that leveraged her face to secure historic broadcast rights offered her a rookie contract worth $76,535 per year. $76,000. For the woman generating billions in new revenue. Stephen A. Smith called it what it is, an insult wrapped in a legal technicality. The collective bargaining agreement, they said. The salary cap, they explained. Our hands are tied, they claimed. But their hands weren't tied when they negotiated those television deals, were they? Their hands weren't tied when they plastered her image across every billboard, every commercial, every promotional campaign designed to attract new fans. No, their hands were only tied when it came time to share the wealth. And Caitlin noticed. She noticed when veteran players publicly mocked her. When officials seemed to swallow their whistles every time she drove to the basket. When the league that needed her presence treated her presence like a problem to be managed. She noticed when she was getting hammered on every possession. Cheap shots, hard fouls, frustration fouls, and the league did nothing. She noticed when her teammates were being outworked, outmatched, and undermined by a front office more interested in optics than championships. But most importantly, she noticed when her phone started ringing. Not from the WNBA, from someone else entirely. The calls came quietly at first. Exploratory conversations, hypothetical scenarios. What if there was another way? What if you didn't have to accept the limitations others have imposed on you? What if you could build something new? The people making these calls weren't amateurs. They weren't dreamers with PowerPoint presentations and empty promises. They were architects. Breanna Stewart, three-time WNBA champion, Olympic gold medalist, one of the greatest players to ever touch a basketball. Nafisa Collier, All-Star, MVP candidate, defensive powerhouse with a mind for business that rivals her court IQ. Together, they had quietly assembled something revolutionary. A league built from scratch, designed by players for players, funded by some of the most aggressive private equity firms in the country. No salary caps, no arbitrary limitations, no archaic rules designed to keep athletes poor while owners get rich. Just pure, unfiltered market value. And they wanted Caitlin Clark to be their centerpiece. The offer they presented wasn't just generous, it was unprecedented. But the exact details of that offer? The specific numbers that made Stephen A. Smith compare her to Lionel Messi? That's where this story gets truly insane. Because what they're offering Caitlin Clark goes beyond anything we've ever seen in women's sports. It might go beyond anything we've seen in professional sports, period. What I'm about to tell you will fundamentally change how you understand athlete compensation. Forget everything you think you know about contracts, about salaries, about what female athletes can earn. Because the offer sitting on Caitlin Clark's table right now makes every previous deal in women's sports history look like pocket change. Stephen A. Smith broke it down piece by piece on First Take. And even he, a man who's seen billion-dollar contracts, mega deals, and superstar negotiations for 3 decades, was visibly stunned. Let's start with the base salary. Unrivaled is reportedly offering Caitlin Clark somewhere between $5 and $10 million for a 3-month season. 3 months. That's more than she would earn in her entire 4-year rookie contract with the Indiana Fever, paid out in a single offseason. For playing basketball in Miami while her WNBA teammates are overseas scraping together supplemental income. But the salary? That's just the appetizer. The main course is where things get revolutionary. Equity. Unrivaled is offering Caitlin Clark an ownership stake in the league itself. Not a symbolic gesture. Not a ceremonial title designed for press releases. Actual equity. Real ownership. A percentage of every dollar the league generates from now until eternity. Think about what that means. Every television deal. Every sponsorship agreement. Every merchandise sale. Every expansion team. Every streaming contract negotiated for the next 50 years. Caitlin Clark would own a piece of all of it. Stephen A. put it in perspective using the Messi blueprint. When Lionel Messi signed with Inter Miami, he didn't just accept a salary. He demanded, and received, a percentage of every new MLS subscription generated through Apple TV. Every single one. That deal is now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Not because of what he's paid per game, but because of what he owns. Caitlin Clark is being offered the exact same structure. And here's why that's so dangerous for the WNBA. Because once a player understands they can own rather than just earn, they never go back. You can't unring that bell. You can't convince someone to accept a $76,000 salary after you've shown them what equity in a growing league looks like. The math becomes impossible to ignore. The WNBA is offering Caitlin Clark a paycheck. Unrivaled is offering Caitlin Clark a legacy. A financial empire that grows every single year. That appreciates in value as women's sports continue their meteoric rise. That compounds and multiplies and builds generational wealth. Not just for her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. We're talking about a deal that could be worth 9 figures over the course of her lifetime. And all she has to do is play basketball. The basketball she was already going to play anyway. But here's where the tension escalates. Because the WNBA isn't just going to watch their golden goose walk out the door. They can't afford to. Their entire business model collapses without Caitlin Clark. So they're fighting back. And the tactics they're using? They're getting ugly. There are whispers coming out of league offices. Conversations with team owners. pressure campaigns targeting sponsors, subtle threats about what happens to players who choose alternatives. The establishment is circling the wagons, and Caitlin Clark is standing in the crosshairs. What happens next could determine the future of women's professional basketball for the next century. But there's one detail Stephen A. revealed that changes everything. One piece of information that suggests this decision may have already been made. Stephen A. Smith said something on First Take that most people missed. It was subtle, almost offhand, buried between his passionate rants about salary caps and league exploitation. But if you were listening closely, really listening, you caught it. And it changes everything. He said, "The people I'm talking to aren't discussing if anymore. They're discussing when." Let that sink in. Not if, when. The negotiations aren't exploratory. They're not preliminary. They're not hypothetical conversations about what might happen someday. They're final stage. Stephen A. has sources inside the room. People who've seen the term sheets. People who know what's been discussed, what's been agreed upon, and what's left to iron out. And according to those sources, Caitlin Clark has already made her decision. The announcement is just a matter of timing. Think about the implications of that statement. While the WNBA is publicly celebrating their record-breaking season, a season built entirely on Caitlin Clark's shoulders, she's already planning her exit. While the Indiana Fever is selling out arenas and moving merchandise at unprecedented rates, their franchise player is negotiating ownership stakes in a competing league. While league executives are patting themselves on the back for finally making women's basketball profitable, the woman responsible for that profit is slipping through their fingers. The irony is almost poetic. But here's where the story gets even more complicated. Because Caitlin Clark isn't just leaving for money. She's leaving for respect. And that distinction matters more than any dollar amount ever could. Stephen A. spent nearly 10 minutes discussing the treatment Caitlin has endured since entering the WNBA. The physicality that crosses the line into targeting. The officiating that seems designed to let it happen. The veteran players who've made it their personal mission to humble her. He called it what it is, hazing disguised as competition. And the league? They've done nothing. Actually, that's not accurate. They've done worse than nothing. They've enabled it. When Caitlin gets shoved to the ground on a dead ball, no flagrant foul. When she takes an elbow to the face on a screen, play on. When she's grabbed, held, and manhandled on every single possession, the whistles stay silent. But when Caitlin expresses frustration, when she shows emotion after being fouled for the 15th time in a quarter, technical foul, unsportsmanlike conduct, media criticism about her attitude, the double standard is so obvious it's become a meme. And Caitlin sees it. She lives it. Every single game. Stephen A. made a point that resonated deeply with anyone paying attention. He said, "You cannot ask someone to be the face of your league while simultaneously allowing that face to be targeted, attacked, and disrespected without consequence. That's not a business strategy. That's sabotage." And Caitlin Clark is too smart to keep playing along. The unrivaled offer isn't just about money. It's about environment. It's about being surrounded by people who actually want her there, who value her presence, who will protect her rather than exploit her. Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier aren't building a league to humble Caitlin Clark. They're building a league to elevate her. There's a reason they want her as the centerpiece. A reason they're offering ownership rather than just salary. A reason they're treating her like a partner instead of an employee. They understand something the WNBA refuses to accept. Caitlin Clark isn't just a player. She's the entire product. And the product deserves a seat at the table where decisions are made. But the WNBA isn't going down without a fight. And their counter-strategy? It's more aggressive than anyone anticipated. What they're planning to do to keep Caitlin Clark might shock you. The WNBA is panicking. And when billion-dollar organizations panic, they don't play fair. Sources close to the league have revealed a multi-pronged strategy designed to keep Caitlin Clark locked in. To make leaving as painful, as complicated, and as costly as humanly possible. This isn't business anymore. This is war. Let's start with the first weapon in their arsenal. Contractual pressure. Caitlin Clark's rookie contract with the Indiana Fever contains clauses that most fans have never seen. Buried in the fine print are restrictions, obligations, and limitations designed to control player movement. The WNBA is reportedly exploring every legal avenue to enforce those restrictions. Can they prevent her from playing in Unrivaled during the offseason? Can they claim breach of contract if she promotes a competing league? Can they impose penalties, fines, or suspensions for conduct deemed detrimental to the league? Their lawyers are working overtime to find out. But legal pressure is just the beginning. The second weapon, media manipulation. Stephen A. Smith hinted at something disturbing during his segment. He said there are already narratives being planted, stories being seeded, talking points being distributed to friendly media outlets designed to shift public perception. The goal? Make Caitlin Clark look like the villain. Make her look greedy, ungrateful, disloyal. Make her look like she's abandoning the women who paved the way for her. Like she's prioritizing money over the movement. Like she's betraying the league that gave her a platform. It's a classic character assassination playbook, and it's already starting. Have you noticed the recent articles questioning Caitlin's attitude? The subtle criticism of her competitiveness? The suggestion that maybe, just maybe, she's not as humble as she should be? That's not coincidence. That's coordination. The WNBA understands that public opinion matters. That sponsors respond to perception. That Caitlin's value depends partially on her image remaining positive. If they can tarnish that image, if they can turn fans against her, they might be able to pressure her into staying. But here's where their strategy reveals its fundamental weakness. They've underestimated who they're dealing with. Caitlin Clark has been fighting uphill battles her entire life. She was told she was too small, too young, too confident, too flashy, too everything. And she dominated anyway. She broke records that were supposed to be unbreakable. She filled arenas that had never seen crowds like that before. She turned a dying sport into a cultural phenomenon through sheer force of will. You think a few negative articles are going to stop her? You think legal threats from a league that can't afford to lose her are going to scare her? You think manufactured controversy is going to shake someone who's been handling pressure since she was 16 years old? No. The WNBA has made a critical miscalculation. They're treating Caitlin Clark like a problem to be managed. But she's not a problem. She's a force of nature. And forces of nature don't respond to pressure. They create it. The third weapon the WNBA is deploying is perhaps the most desperate of all. They're trying to buy time. League sources have confirmed that emergency meetings are being held at the highest levels. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert is personally involved. Team owners are being briefed on contingency plans. The topic of discussion? A special exemption. A one-time exception to the salary cap designed specifically for Caitlin Clark. A supermax contract that circumvents the collective bargaining agreement. A deal that would pay her what she's actually worth within the existing WNBA structure. But there's a problem. A massive problem that threatens to tear the entire league apart. What happens when you pay one player 10 times more than everyone else? What happens to team chemistry? To player morale? To the fragile ecosystem of professional women's basketball? The answer might destroy everything the WNBA has built. Imagine walking into work tomorrow. You've been at your company for a decade. You've sacrificed. You've grinded. You've put in the hours when nobody was watching. You've helped build something from nothing. And then a 22-year-old shows up. Talented? Absolutely. Hardworking? No question. Generational? Sure. But then management announces that this new hire will be paid 10 times your salary. Not twice. Not 3 times. 10 times. How would you feel? Now multiply that feeling across an entire league. That's the powder keg the WNBA is sitting on right now. Stephen A. Smith addressed this directly. He called it the elephant in the room that nobody wants to acknowledge. The uncomfortable truth that makes a Caitlin Clark supermax almost impossible to implement. The veteran players won't accept it. And honestly, can you blame them? Diana Taurasi has been in this league for 2 decades. She's sacrificed millions in potential earnings overseas to stay loyal to the WNBA. She's won championships. She's broken records. She's carried franchises on her back when nobody was watching. Breanna Stewart is a 3-time champion, a 2-time MVP, one of the most complete players in basketball history. She's been fighting for pay equity her entire career. Aya Wilson is the reigning MVP, the face of the Las Vegas Aces, a dominant force who's proven herself at the highest levels of competition. These women didn't just show up. They built this league brick by brick during the years when nobody cared. And now they're supposed to watch a rookie get paid more than all of them combined? The resentment is already simmering. You can see it in the body language during games. You can hear it in the carefully worded interviews. You can feel it in the tension whenever Caitlin Clark's name comes up in mixed company. The WNBA didn't just fail to pay Caitlin what she's worth. They created a situation where paying her destroys the locker room. It's a lose-lose scenario of their own making. If they don't pay her, she leaves for Unrivaled. If they do pay her, the veteran players revolt. Either way, the league fractures. Stephen A. called it a masterclass in mismanagement, a decade of ignoring obvious problems until those problems became unsolvable, a failure of leadership so complete that it might cost them their most valuable asset. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. The veteran players, the same ones who might resent a Caitlin Clark supermax, are the ones who founded Unrivaled. Breanna Stewart, Napheesa Collier, two of the most respected players in WNBA history. They're not trying to compete with Caitlin Clark. They're trying to recruit her. Think about what that means. The very players who should be most threatened by Caitlin's rise are actively building a platform for her success. They're offering her ownership stakes. They're designing a league around her drawing power. Why would they do that? Because they understand something the WNBA doesn't. Rising tides lift all boats. Caitlin Clark's success doesn't diminish their legacy. It amplifies it. Her popularity doesn't threaten their accomplishments. It validates them. Every eyeball she brings to women's basketball is an eyeball that might discover Breanna Stewart, that might appreciate Aya Wilson, that might learn about Diana Taurasi's legendary career. The veterans who get it, who really get it, aren't fighting against Caitlin. They're fighting alongside her, against a system that's been underpaying all of them for decades. Unrivaled isn't just an alternative for Caitlin Clark. It's a revolution for every woman who's ever been told her talent doesn't deserve fair compensation. And the WNBA? They're about to become the cautionary tale of what happens when you take your most valuable people for granted. But the drama doesn't end there, because there's a third party involved in this situation that nobody is talking about. A silent player with more influence than anyone realizes, and their involvement changes everything. There's someone pulling strings behind the scenes, someone whose name hasn't appeared in any headline, whose involvement hasn't been reported by any major outlet, whose influence extends far beyond basketball courts and television contracts. Nike, the most powerful brand in sports history, and they have a massive stake in what Caitlin Clark decides to do next. Stephen A. Smith touched on this briefly during his segment, almost too briefly, like he was testing the waters before diving into deeper territory. But the implications of what he suggested are staggering. Caitlin Clark signed with Nike shortly after being drafted. The details of that deal were never fully disclosed. Industry insiders estimated it somewhere between $20 and $30 million over multiple years. Massive by WNBA standards. A rounding error by Nike's standards. But here's what nobody understood at the time. Nike didn't sign Caitlin Clark because of what she is right now. They signed her because of what she's about to become. And they've been quietly positioning themselves for this exact moment. Think about Nike's history with transformational athletes. Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, LeBron James, Serena Williams. Every single time, Nike didn't just sign a player. They built an empire around them. They created sub-brands. They launched product lines. They transformed athletes into global icons worth billions in brand equity. Caitlin Clark is next. And Nike doesn't care whether she's in the WNBA or Unrivaled. They care about one thing: visibility. Wherever Caitlin plays, Nike's swoosh will be visible. Whatever league she joins, Nike's marketing machine will amplify. However her career unfolds, Nike's investment will multiply. But here's where it gets interesting. Nike isn't just passively watching this situation develop. According to sources close to the negotiation, Nike representatives have been in direct communication with Unrivaled's founders. They've been asking questions, probing questions. What's your media strategy? What broadcasting partnerships are you pursuing? What's your international distribution plan? How do you intend to position your marquee athletes? These aren't casual inquiries. These are due diligence questions from a company considering major investment. Stephen A. hinted that Nike might be preparing to do something unprecedented. They might be preparing to sponsor an entire league, not just individual players, not just equipment deals and jersey patches. Full partnership, presenting sponsor, naming rights potential. The Nike Unrivaled League. Can you imagine? The biggest sports brand in the world throwing their weight behind a 3-on-3 startup? Legitimizing it overnight? Giving it instant credibility and global reach? That's not speculation anymore. That's strategic positioning. Nike sees what's happening. They see the trajectory. They understand that women's sports is about to explode in ways that make the current growth look like a warm-up. And they want to own that explosion. Caitlin Clark is their vehicle. Unrivaled might be their platform. And the WNBA? The WNBA might become an afterthought. But Nike isn't the only major corporation paying attention. There's another player in this chess match. Another media giant whose involvement could tip the scales entirely. And what they're offering makes Nike's interest look small. The streaming wars are about to collide with women's basketball. And Caitlin Clark is standing at the center of the battlefield. What happens next could reshape how we consume sports forever. Netflix, Amazon, Apple. 3 tech giants with bottomless pockets and insatiable hunger for content. And right now, they're all circling the same target. Caitlin Clark. Stephen A. Smith dropped a bombshell that got buried beneath the contract discussions and league drama. A piece of information so significant that it deserves its own conversation. Streaming platforms are actively bidding for women's basketball content. Not casually interested. Not exploring options. Not having preliminary discussions. Actively bidding. With real money. The numbers being thrown around are almost incomprehensible. Amazon reportedly offered 9 figures for exclusive streaming rights to a women's basketball property. Apple is countering with promises of documentary series, behind-the-scenes content, and global distribution. Netflix is dangling the possibility of a Drive to Survive style docuseries that could transform players into household names worldwide. And every single one of these offers has one condition attached. Caitlin Clark must be involved. She's not just a nice-to-have. She's not just a marketing bonus. She's not just a popular player who might boost ratings. She's the entire value proposition. Without Caitlin Clark, these deals fall apart. With Caitlin Clark, they become some of the most lucrative sports media contracts in history. Think about what that means for Unrivaled. They're not just offering Caitlin a salary and equity. They're offering her a percentage of streaming deals that could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Stephen A. compared it to what happened with Formula One. Before Netflix's Drive to Survive, F1 was a niche European sport with minimal American audience. After the docuseries, it became a cultural phenomenon. Races sold out. Merchandise exploded. A new generation of fans emerged seemingly overnight. The streaming effect is real, and it's about to hit women's basketball with the force of a tsunami. Unrivaled understands this. That's why they're structured the way they are. That's why they're offering equity instead of just salary. That's why they're treating Caitlin Clark like a partner rather than an employee. Because she's not just playing basketball. She's becoming content. Every game she plays is a potential episode. Every rivalry she develops is a storyline. Every triumph and struggle is narrative gold for documentary filmmakers. Her life is about to become a media property worth more than most professional sports franchises. And whoever controls that property controls the future of women's sports entertainment. The WNBA sees this happening. They're not blind, but they're handcuffed by their existing media deals, by their broadcast partnerships with traditional networks, by contracts signed years ago that never anticipated a player like Caitlin Clark emerging. They can't pivot fast enough. They can't offer what the streaming platforms are demanding. They can't compete with the flexibility that Unrivaled has as a new entity unburdened by legacy agreements. It's a structural disadvantage that might prove fatal. Stephen A. put it bluntly. He said, "The WNBA is fighting a modern war with outdated weapons. They're bringing broadcast contracts to a streaming fight." And Caitlin Clark? She's watching all of this unfold. She's seeing the bids come in. She's understanding her own value. She's recognizing that the ceiling for her career isn't defined by what exists today. It's defined by what she's willing to build. But there's one final piece of this puzzle that we haven't discussed yet. One factor that might matter more than money. More than equity. More than streaming deals and media empires. It's the reason Stephen A. Smith believes this decision is already made. And it has nothing to do with basketball. Money is powerful. Equity is transformational. Streaming deals are life-changing. But none of those things explain why Caitlin Clark has already made her decision. None of those things capture the real motivation driving the most significant career move in women's sports history. Stephen A. Smith said something near the end of his segment that cut through all the business talk, all the contract analysis, all the financial projections and media valuations. He said, "This is about legacy. This is about being remembered as someone who changed the game, not just played it." And in that single statement, he revealed everything. Caitlin Clark isn't chasing dollars. She's chasing immortality. Think about the athletes we remember decades after they retire. Muhammad Ali. We remember him not just for his boxing skills. We remember him for refusing to be told what he was worth, for demanding respect, for building his own platform when the establishment wouldn't give him one. Billie Jean King. We remember her not just for her tennis championships, We remember her for fighting battles that extended far beyond any court, for creating opportunities that didn't exist before she demanded they exist. Jackie Robinson. We remember him not just for breaking the color barrier. We remember him for the courage it took to stand alone, for accepting the burden of being first. These athletes transcended their sports. They became symbols. And Caitlin Clark has the opportunity to join their ranks, not by accepting the limitations imposed on her, but by refusing to accept them. Not by playing along with a system designed to exploit her, but by building a new system entirely. Stephen A. made a prediction that stopped me cold. He said, 20 years from now, we won't be talking about Caitlin Clark's WNBA statistics. We'll be talking about how she transformed the economics of women's professional sports forever. That's the real prize. That's what drives someone who's already achieved everything on the court. The opportunity to matter beyond the game itself. Unrivaled understands this. That's why their pitch isn't just about money. It's about meaning. They're offering Caitlin the chance to be a founder, a builder, an architect of something that will outlast her playing career by generations. When Unrivaled succeeds, and with her involvement, it will succeed, she won't just be remembered as its best player. She'll be remembered as its creator. Her name will be on the ownership documents. Her vision will be embedded in its DNA. Her fingerprints will be on every decision, every expansion, every milestone the league achieves for the next century. That's not a business deal. That's a legacy. And Caitlin Clark is smart enough to know the difference. The WNBA can never offer her this. They can never offer ownership in a league she didn't help build. They can never offer the satisfaction of creating something from scratch. They can never offer the pride of proving that a better way exists. All they can offer is a paycheck. And for someone operating at Caitlin's level, a paycheck isn't enough. Stephen A. closed his segment with a warning for the WNBA. A warning they would be wise to take seriously. He said, "You had the most valuable asset in women's sports. You had the golden goose. And instead of protecting it, instead of nurturing it, instead of building around it, you took it for granted. And now you're about to lose it forever." The announcement is coming. The only question is when. But before we get to the timeline, the specific dates and events that will make this official, there's one more thing you need to understand. The ripple effects of this decision will extend far beyond Caitlin Clark. What happens next will change everything. For every female athlete, in every sport, forever. We've arrived at the final chapter. But this isn't really an ending. It's a beginning. The beginning of something that will reshape professional sports in ways we can barely comprehend. Stephen A. Smith concluded his historic segment with a vision of the future. A prediction so bold, so sweeping, so transformational that it deserves to be remembered as the moment everything changed. He said, Caitlin Clark isn't just going to join Unrivaled. She's going to prove that the old model is broken beyond repair. And once she proves it, every sport will follow. Think about the implications. Right now, women's soccer players are watching. They're seeing a basketball player demand equity, demand ownership, demand treatment commensurate with her actual value. Right now, women's tennis players are taking notes. They're recognizing that the system they've accepted for decades isn't the only system possible. Right now, female athletes in every sport, volleyball, softball, hockey, golf, gymnastics, are waking up to a new reality. You don't have to accept what they offer. You can build your own. Caitlin Clark is about to become patient zero for a revolution. Her success with Unrivaled will create a template, a blueprint, a proven model that can be replicated across every professional sport where women have been underpaid, undervalued, and underestimated. And the establishment knows it. That's why they're fighting so hard. That's why the WNBA is deploying every weapon in their arsenal. That's why the negative stories are being planted. That's why the pressure campaigns are intensifying. Because this isn't just about one player leaving one league. This is about the entire power structure crumbling. If Caitlin succeeds, when Caitlin succeeds, every female athlete in America will have proof that another way exists. That you don't have to accept pennies on the dollar. That you don't have to sacrifice your value for the privilege of playing. The dominoes will fall, one by one, league by league, sport by sport, until the old guard has no choice but to adapt or die. Stephen A. made one final point that brought everything together. He compared what's happening to the formation of the American Basketball Association in 1967, a rival league that forced the NBA to improve, to pay players more, to innovate, to evolve. Without the ABA, the NBA might still be operating like a minor league operation. Without competition, there's no pressure to change. Unrivaled is the ABA of women's basketball, and Caitlin Clark is Julius Erving, the transformational talent whose presence legitimizes everything. The timeline for the announcement is reportedly within the next few weeks, before the WNBA playoffs conclude, before the offseason officially begins, before anyone can prepare for the shockwave. When it happens, and it will happen, the sports world will divide into before and after. Before Caitlin Clark demanded her worth, after she proved she could claim it. Stephen A. Smith ended his segment with words that gave me chills. He looked directly into the camera and said, "To every young girl watching this, to every female athlete who's been told to be grateful for whatever crumbs they throw you, to every woman who's been underestimated and underpaid and undervalued, watch what happens next. Because Caitlin Clark is about to show you what's possible when you refuse to accept less than you deserve. The future isn't coming. The future is here. And her name is Caitlin Clark." If this story moved you, if you understand the magnitude of what's about to happen, then you need to stay informed. Subscribe to this channel right now. Hit the notification bell. Because when the official announcement drops, we'll be the first to break it down. The first to analyze every detail. The first to explain what it means for women's basketball and beyond. This is history unfolding in real time. Don't miss a single moment. Drop a comment below. Do you think Caitlin Clark is making the right decision? I'll see you in the next video.